January 28, 1971. Newark, New Jersey, 11:47 p.m. Detective Richie Roberts was staring at the biggest pile of cash he'd ever seen in his life. Nearly $1 million in small bills, stacked on a table in a drug dealer's apartment. His partner was unconscious from a head injury. Backup was 30 minutes away, and Roberts was completely alone with enough money to solve every problem he'd ever had. His mortgage was 3 months behind. His wife was threatening divorce. His kids needed shoes. His car was falling apart. $1 million could change everything. All he had to do was walk away and pretend he'd never seen it. Instead, Roberts picked up his radio and called it in. "Central, I need the evidence van and a supervisor. I've got approximately $1 million in cash that needs to be vouchered." That decision would make Richie Roberts the most hated cop in Newark. It would also make him the only man in America capable of bringing down Frank Lucas. But to understand why Roberts was willing to destroy his own life to catch one criminal, you need to understand what Newark looked like in 1971. The city was drowning in corruption. Police commanders were on the payroll of every major criminal organization. Detectives sold evidence. Beat cops provided protection services. Federal agents took bribes to look the other way. Into this environment came Richie Roberts, Italian-American from the Bronx, law degree from Seton Hall, 13 years as a detective, and one unbreakable rule. He would never take dirty money. Not from bookmakers, not from loan sharks, not from drug dealers, not from anyone. This made Roberts incredibly dangerous to every corrupt official in New Jersey. Clean cops ask uncomfortable questions. They investigate cases that other detectives ignore. They follow evidence wherever it leads, even when it leads to other cops. Roberts had been tracking drug money for 3 years when he stumbled onto the Frank Lucas investigation. What started as routine, narcotics work had revealed something unprecedented, a criminal organization that operated like a Fortune 500 company. Professional management, quality control, customer service, sophisticated financial planning. The problem was that Roberts couldn't get anyone to take the investigation seriously. His supervisors looked at the evidence and saw a small-time Harlem dealer who got lucky. They didn't see the invisible empire that Roberts was uncovering. "Roberts, you're chasing ghosts," his captain told him. "This Lucas guy drives a beat-up car and lives in the suburbs. He's not moving the kind of weight you're talking about." But Roberts had learned to read financial patterns. Lucas's organization was generating massive revenue while maintaining almost no visible assets. That level of financial sophistication required intelligence, planning, and resources that traditional street dealers didn't possess. Roberts started building his case from the ground up. Bank records, travel patterns, real estate transactions, business licenses. He followed the money through a maze of legitimate businesses, offshore accounts, and shell corporations. What he found was criminal enterprise on a scale that law enforcement had never seen before. The breakthrough came when Roberts connected Lucas to the military supply chain from Southeast Asia. The use of military coffins as smuggling vehicles was so audacious, so perfectly camouflaged, that it had operated undetected for years. Roberts realized he wasn't just investigating a drug dealer. He was investigating criminal genius. But building a case against Frank Lucas required resources that Roberts didn't have. Federal agents, wiretaps, surveillance teams, undercover operations. The Newark Police Department was too small and too corrupt to handle an investigation of this magnitude. Roberts needed help from federal agencies. But federal agencies in 1971 had their own corruption problems. Drug Enforcement Administration agents were regularly compromised. FBI agents looked the other way when it served their interests. Customs officials took bribes to ignore suspicious cargo. Roberts found allies in unexpected places. Young federal agents who shared his commitment to clean law enforcement. Prosecutors who were willing to take on major corruption cases. Military investigators who were concerned about the misuse of military resources. Together, They built what would become the largest organized crime investigation in American history. But the investigation faced constant sabotage from within law enforcement itself. Evidence disappeared, witnesses were intimidated, surveillance operations were compromised. Roberts realized that Frank Lucas wasn't just fighting law enforcement. He was fighting corrupt law enforcement against clean law enforcement. The same police officers who should have been helping Roberts catch Lucas were actively working to protect him. The turning point came in 1974 when Roberts finally identified the scope of Lucas's operation. Direct supply lines from Southeast Asia, distribution networks throughout the eastern United States, financial assets in dozens of countries. This wasn't just a criminal organization. This was a multinational corporation that happened to be illegal. Roberts also realized something else. Frank Lucas represented a new type of criminal. Not the violent, disorganized street criminals that police were trained to catch, but sophisticated businessmen who used intelligence instead of intimidation, strategy instead of violence. Traditional police methods didn't work against Frank Lucas. He couldn't be intimidated because he wasn't afraid of law enforcement. He couldn't be infiltrated because his organization was built on family loyalty. He couldn't be traced through normal channels because his operations bypassed normal channels entirely. Roberts had to become as innovative as the criminal he was chasing. He used financial analysis instead of street informants. He studied corporate structures instead of criminal hierarchies. He investigated business transactions instead of violent crimes. The cat-and-mouse game between Roberts and Lucas lasted 4 years. Lucas knew he was being investigated, but couldn't identify the specific threat. Roberts knew Lucas was operating, but couldn't prove the specific crimes. Both men respected each other's intelligence while working to destroy each other professionally. The end came in January 1975 when Lucas made his fatal mistake. The chinchilla coat at the Ali Frazier fight gave Roberts the visual confirmation he needed to focus his investigation. Within months, Roberts had gathered enough evidence to justify a major federal operation. January 28, 1975. 6 a.m. 50 federal agents surrounded Frank Lucas's house in Teaneck, New Jersey. Roberts led the team that arrested the man he'd been chasing for 4 years. When they broke down the door, Lucas was reading the newspaper and drinking coffee. "Frank Lucas, you're under arrest," Roberts said. Lucas looked up and smiled. "Detective Roberts, I've been expecting you." During the arrest, Roberts found something that explained everything he'd observed about Lucas's operation. Financial records, organizational charts, business plans, quality control procedures. Lucas had been running his criminal enterprise like a legitimate corporation. Frank Lucas was sentenced to 70 years in federal prison, but in a surprising twist, he chose to cooperate with law enforcement. Lucas provided information that led to the arrest and conviction of dozens of corrupt officials throughout the New York law enforcement community. Roberts's investigation had revealed something more dangerous than any single criminal: systematic corruption that had infected every level of law enforcement. Police commanders, federal agents, prosecutors, judges. The entire criminal justice system had been compromised by money and intimidation. The Lucas case became a model for a modern organized crime investigation. Roberts had proven that clean law enforcement could defeat criminal genius, but only through dedication, intelligence, and absolute integrity. He'd also proven that corruption was more dangerous than crime itself. Years later, Roberts would say that investigating Frank Lucas taught him something important about law enforcement. The most dangerous criminals aren't the ones who break laws. They're the ones who corrupt the people who are supposed to enforce laws. Richie Roberts retired from law enforcement in 1982 and became a defense attorney. Ironically, he spent the rest of his career defending the same type of criminals he'd once arrested. But he never forgot the lesson of the Frank Lucas case. In a world where everyone had a price, Roberts had proven that integrity could be more powerful than money. In a system where corruption was normal, Roberts had shown that clean law enforcement was possible. In an environment where criminals seemed untouchable, Roberts had proven that intelligence and persistence could defeat criminal genius. The cop who wouldn't break had broken the most sophisticated criminal organization in American history. Not through violence or intimidation, but through simple refusal to compromise his principles. Sometimes the most revolutionary thing you can do is exactly what you're supposed to do. If this story of integrity, corruption, and justice moved you, hit that subscribe button. Drop a like if you believe that doing the right thing is always the right thing, even when it costs everything. Share this with someone who knows that character is more valuable than cash. What would you have done with that $1 million? Let me know in the comments below.